This is my Ignite presentation from PepCon 2013. I got this quote from Wikipedia. It says, "A pattern is a discernible regularity in the world or in a man-made design. As such, the elements of a pattern repeat in a predictable manner." I made this onion in Illustrator, and I made all of the purple lines using a graphic style. Each ring of the onion has got 6 or 7 different strokes applied to it with a different thickness and different shades of purple. So once you draw all the concentric circle rings of the onion and apply the graphic style, you'll get that nice gradation effect going from ring to ring to ring. I made this in InDesign using a plugin by TeaCup software called PatternMaker, and this particular pattern is called Spirals. And after I colored the pattern, I also added bevel and emboss to both the graphic and the frame. I added a gradient to the frame, and all the little petals on the spiral, or on the daisy, are made using a bevel and emboss and drop shadow on both the stroke and the fill. This is actually 2 separate strokes. I made 2 custom stroke styles with their custom dashed lines, and you first make the white keys and then draw the line and copy and paste in place right on top, and then change the stroke style to the black keys effect, and then I applied a bevel and emboss over the black keys. This design is from the carpet here in our hotel, and I actually made an arc in Illustrator. I copied it and pasted it into InDesign, and then I set up a paragraph style. All the little ellipses are done using type on a path. So I found a font that had a round circular glyph somewhere in the font set, and then I skewed it by about maybe 20 or 30%, and then I colored it. I set up 8 different character styles, and I then set up a paragraph style with really tight kerning and a nested style. So it would first color the first character orange, the next character red, the next character yellow, and so forth. And then I ended it with a repeat nested style, and so it would repeat that same color pattern to all the different ellipses all around the arc. And then for the background, that's also a PatternMaker Lines pattern. This is another PatternMaker pattern. It's composed of 5 different objects. First, you have a thick PatternMaker lines, kind of going at maybe like 20 degrees or 60 degrees, just at an angle, and then you copy, paste, and place, flip it over, and change the color. And those are your two base objects, and apply blending mode, whatever your blending mode choice is, and then group them together and isolate blending, and then copy and paste again in place one of the lines, and change the line pattern in PatternMaker to dashed lines. And then behind all of that, you can add a different color. It's like a solid fill. So there's five different objects. There's a solid fill, 2 thick lines with the blending mode, and 2 dashed lines. So this is a herringbone pattern. It's kind of a modification of a Chevron pattern that's really popular these days, and it's trapezoids. But really, what are trapezoids except that they're squares or rectangles that have been skewed? So I made PatternMaker Squares, a frame of PatternMaker Squares, and then I skewed that, and I copied, paste in place, flip horizontally, change the color, and then group them together. You have to scoot them into place so that they line up, but this is just 2 frames of PatternMaker Squares. This is a Chevron pattern, and this is a pretty popular pattern right now in home furnishings and fashion design. And I made this using conditional text indicators. So what you do is you draw out a text frame, do a right indent tab, which is Shift tab, and copy and paste that a bunch of times, and probably going to need to tighten up the leading. And then open up the conditional text panel and make a bunch of conditions, I don't know, 7, 8, however many you feel like, and apply all the conditions to all the text. And that is going to give you these massive amounts of conditional text indicators. And then in the conditional text panel, you're going to choose conditional text indicators, show and print. The print part is what we're after here. So export a PDF, and you'll have all the little chevrons right in your PDF. So then take that PDF and open it up in Illustrator, and you'll have all these chevrons that you can then edit as desired, color code them. It's easier to change the colors of multiple objects in Illustrator. So I do select same color, change to orange, different shades of orange, and then once I have a color that I want, copy and paste it back in InDesign. So what I like to do with my patterns is look at the natural world around me and then recreate interesting patterns in a digital graphic form. And then sometimes I'll also turn them into knitting. But then if I want to tell other people how to create the knitted pattern, I have to create it again in a digital graphic form. So I'm going to walk you through a project that I did that's based on my first trip to the Atlantic. There was no one on the beach, and it was so peaceful, and it was so quiet, and the waves were small, and it was just beautiful blue and green water. And I wanted to create an Afghan based on the rhythm of the waves and the peacefulness there. So I came up with this. This is an InDesign table. It's a table, you say? Yes. There's no numbers. It's not a spreadsheet. It's a table. And what I did is I used diagonal strokes. So this is the pattern stitch that I decided to use to create my knitted Afghan. This is a garter stitch, and it's a simple pattern. It goes like this. You knit to the end of the row, you flip it over, and you knit again to the end of the row. There's no purling at all. And it's a really great pattern. It's simple. It's easy to do in the dark or after a really long day of technical writing. And so it's also great because it's very mathematical, very geometric. It's got a 2-to-1 ratio. Each stitch is 2 times as wide as it is high. And what is a little hard to see in this picture is that hidden in between each line of waves, there's another row hiding back there. So if you flip it over, it's the same on both sides. And that's what gives it the magical 2-to-1 ratio. And it lies totally flat. There's no curling. And because it's got that 2-to-1 ratio, it's really useful for designing geometric patterns with nice crisp 45-degree angles, 90-degree angles. So this is the pattern that I chose to use for my triangle Afghan. I figured out how in PatternMaker to use the PatternMaker Waves pattern to get me the same geometry that I was trying to replicate from the original garter stitch pattern, and it's got a 2-to-1 ratio. So you can see the two side by side how I made PatternMaker mimic the blue garter stitch of my pattern swatch. So then I had to figure out how I was going to knit this blanket. And I decided after about 15 hours of knitting, I finally figured out the right way to do it. And I had to start at the bottom. And so I started with a few bands of white garter stitch. And then I made a right slanting green triangle. And then I did a right slanting band of white. And then I did a large left slanting triangle and another left slanting band of white, and so on and so forth, working my way up each strip. And so this was a modular piece. I did each strip independent of the other strips, and then I sewed them together afterward. In the original construction, I didn't have the white bands on the side, so I would just start off with white and then green, and it would just go up on the sides like this. And I actually I knitted the white vertical bands on later. So this is my piece. I made 2 columns of each color for a total of 12 columns. And I love the way that the diagonals line up from one corner to the other corner. It captures the rhythm of the waves that I saw at the ocean that day. So if I wanted to let someone else knit this for their house, they had to have a way to follow my instructions. And so I went back to my graphic design software after I had knitted the blanket blind without any written pattern, and I decided I need to capture this so that other people can duplicate it if they want to. And so I started starting on the left. You've got 5 ridges of white for a total of 10 rows, so 10 rows of white, and then you make a small right slanting triangle, and then you do on the bias a right slanting trapezoid, and then you do a large left slanting triangle, and again on the bias 5 ridges of white, and then a large right slanting triangle, 5 more ridges of white on the bias, and then a small right slanting triangle. Actually, this is the left slanting, it's just missing the top half. And then finish it off with white. The original design had more triangles. I think it had 6 large triangles, but for this instance I just broke it down to the simplest pattern, and you can extend this out and make your strips as long as you want, as long as you follow the basic schematic. So this is how I ended up doing my knitting pattern. Number 1 is a white base triangle, so every time you see a number 1, you just follow the set of instructions here. And then number 2 is a right slanting blue small triangle, that's right here. Number 3 is a right slanting diagonal stripe. Number 4 is a large blue right pointing triangle. So number 4 is the dividing line right here between number 4 and number 5. Then this is number 5, this half of the triangle. Number 6 is a band of white. And 7 and 8, same thing as number 4 and 5, except that they point a different direction. But again, this is the dividing line between 7 and 8. And then number 3, again, a band of white. And number 9 is a smaller blue triangle again. And finish it off with, you guessed it, another band of white. So you can repeat 3 through 3, this section here, to your heart's desire, and the pattern will still work. You just have to make sure you have enough yarn. So where do you see patterns in your day-to-day life? Do you see them in the tiles, in waves, in architecture, maybe in routines or structure or sound or rhythms or habits or the form of objects or geometry, maybe in flowers or shapes? I encourage you to take some time, look around, and try to see the regularity in the design of the world around us. My name is Kelly Vaughn. I am Document Geek, and if you liked this long Ignite session, be sure to check out my blog at documentgeek.blogspot.com. I write lots of interesting articles about stroke styles and patterns and using software in ways that it wasn't intended for. Thanks for watching.